I'm Noah Mitchell, 34, and until last year, I trusted my sister Mackenzie with everything. We grew up inseparable despite our differences. While I built a stable life through careful planning, I never imagined she'd betray me. Finding unauthorized charges was shocking, but discovering she drained my savings account of $45,000 was devastating. When confronted with evidence, she just laughed and said, "You're just being dramatic." Before I get into how I shut down my sister's financial fraud, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself when family crosses the line. Growing up in Portland with Mackenzie was the definition of a normal childhood. Our parents worked hard, Dad as an electrician and Mom as a dental hygienist, to provide us with everything we needed. Though only 3 years apart, Mackenzie and I couldn't have been more different. I was the cautious one who saved my allowance for months to buy something special, while she'd spend hers within hours of receiving it. Despite these differences, we were close. I'd help her with homework, and she dragged me on adventures I was too timid to pursue on my own. Our parents instilled in us the importance of education. When high school ended, I applied for every scholarship I could find. Between academic scholarships, part-time jobs, and some student loans, I managed to attend a decent state university to study computer science. Those college years were tough, balancing classes, work, and a tight budget, but I was determined to graduate with minimal debt. Mackenzie took a different path. She started college but dropped out after 3 semesters, claiming it wasn't for her. Instead, she bounced between retail jobs, restaurant positions, and brief stints in sales. Nothing seemed to hold her interest for long. While I worried about her lack of direction, I admired her free spirit and ability to live in the moment, something I struggled with. After graduation, I landed an entry-level software development position at a mid-sized tech company. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but it offered stability and growth potential. I lived like I was still a college student for those first few years, putting every extra dollar toward paying off my student loans. My friends thought I was extreme, declining invitations to expensive restaurants or passing on weekend trips. But financial freedom was my priority. By age 30, I'd paid off all my student debt and built a respectable emergency fund. My credit score climbed into the excellent range, and I started investing more aggressively in my 401k and index funds. I bought a modest 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it was mine. My 10-year-old Toyota might not have impressed anyone, but it was reliable and paid for. Meanwhile, Mackenzie's financial situation remained chaotic. She'd call me about maxed-out credit cards or needing money for rent. I helped when I could, always with the promise that this was the last time. She'd make genuine efforts to improve, starting budgets that never lasted, attempting to build savings that would inevitably be emptied for some emergency. I tried not to judge, recognizing that financial responsibility didn't come naturally to everyone. Our adult relationship settled into a pattern. She'd call when in trouble, and I'd dispense advice or occasionally financial help. Despite her issues, I valued having her in my life. As our parents aged and faced their own health challenges, Mackenzie and I became closer, united in helping them navigate doctor appointments and medication schedules. Last Thanksgiving, our extended family gathered at our parents' house. During dinner, the conversation turned to investments and retirement planning, topics I'd become increasingly interested in. I mentioned some recent success with my portfolio and plans to possibly buy a rental property. I noticed Mackenzie paying unusually close attention, asking specific questions about my accounts and investment strategy. At the time, I interpreted her interest as a positive sign that she might finally be taking her finances seriously. On the personal front, I'd recently ended a 2-year relationship with Rachel. We parted amicably, both recognizing we wanted different things. She was eager to start a family, while I wanted to focus on career advancement and financial security for a few more years. The breakup left me somewhat isolated. I threw myself into work, picking up extra projects and earning a promotion to senior developer. Looking back, I can see how vulnerable I was when Mackenzie's next crisis emerged. I was lonely, focused on work and money rather than relationships, and eager to maintain my only close family connection. The warning signs were there, but I wasn't emotionally prepared to recognize them. The call came on a rainy Tuesday evening in February. I was working late, debugging code for a client project due the next day, when Mackenzie's name flashed on my phone screen. "Noah, I don't know what to do," she sobbed. "They're laying off half the department, and I didn't make the cut. My lease is up next week, and I can't renew without proof of income. I have nowhere to go." My stomach tightened. I'd heard variations of this crisis before, but the timing seemed particularly bad. "What about your savings?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "You know I had to use that when my car needed repairs last month," she said, her voice small. "It's just for a couple weeks, Noah. Just until I find another job and get my first paycheck. Please. I don't want to ask Mom and Dad. You know Dad's heart can't take the stress." The mention of our father's recent health scare was deliberate, and we both knew it. I sighed, staring at my second bedroom that functioned as a home office. I valued my space and routine, but this was my sister. "Okay," I finally agreed. "Just for a couple weeks. You can have the spare room." Her relief was palpable. "You're the best brother ever. I promise I won't be any trouble. You won't even know I'm there." 3 days later, Mackenzie arrived with 4 suitcases, 3 boxes, and her cat, Tiger, despite my building's no-pet policy. When I pointed this out, she burst into tears. "I couldn't leave him at the shelter. They might put him down. Please, Noah, it's just until I find a pet-friendly apartment." Once again I relented, helping her arrange her belongings in the spare room. There was barely space for the desk I use for work, but I told myself it was temporary. I could manage for a few weeks. The first week went surprisingly well. Mackenzie kept to herself, spent days applying for jobs online, and even cooked dinner twice. She seemed genuinely appreciative, helping with dishes and keeping her belongings contained to her room. Then came the first request. "Noah, I hate to ask, but I need to pick up some groceries and toiletries. My card was declined, probably because of the address change. Could I borrow yours? Just this once?" I handed over my credit card with minimal hesitation. "Just the essentials, okay? Let's keep it under $100. "Of course. I'll be super frugal, I promise." When she returned with 4 bags from Target, I glanced at the receipt. $142.37. Not wildly over budget, but more than agreed upon. Among the essentials were fancy scented candles, a new set of throw pillows for the couch, and premium ice cream. "I thought I could make the place nicer for both of us," she explained when she saw my expression. "And I got that Rocky Road you loved as a kid. We can have some while watching a movie tonight." It seemed petty to argue over such small indulgences, so I let it go. But over the next few weeks, I noticed more unexpected charges. $34 at a wine shop, $57 at a cosmetics store, $83 at a boutique I'd never heard of. Each time I questioned her, Mackenzie had a ready explanation: a birthday gift for a friend, interview clothes, a thank you present for someone who'd referred her to a job opportunity. Meanwhile, her job search seemed to progress slowly. She had excuses for why positions weren't suitable. The commute was too long, the pay too low, the hours incompatible with her networking events, which seemed to involve meeting friends at bars several nights a week. As weeks turned into a month, then 2, Mackenzie settled in. Her belongings migrated from the spare room to the living room, bathroom, and kitchen. Tiger shed on my couch and occasionally scratched my leather armchair. When I raised concerns, Mackenzie would look hurt. "I thought you were happy having me here. It's nice not to live alone, right? Don't worry about the job. I have a really promising interview next week." One day, I came home to find my mail scattered on the kitchen counter, including an open bank statement. When I asked Mackenzie about it, she shrugged. "Sorry, I wasn't paying attention when I opened the mail. Habit from my own place, I guess." A few days later, she approached me with an odd request. Noah, remember that money you said you could lend me for the security deposit when I find a place? I think I found an apartment, but they need proof of funds now to hold it. Could you transfer the money to my account? Or maybe give me your banking password so I can do it myself? I know you're super busy with work. Something about her request made me uncomfortable. I don't think sharing passwords is a good idea, even with family. But I can set up a separate login for you with limited access to just transfer the agreed amount. She seemed disappointed but agreed. I created a restricted access login that would allow her to transfer no more than the $1,500 I promised for her new place. As March turned to April, Mackenzie's presence began to wear on me. She stayed up late watching TV while I tried to sleep, invited friends over without asking, and somehow always needed just one more thing from the store on my credit card. Then came the business trip. My company needed me to help integrate our software with a client's systems in Chicago, a 2-week assignment. Mackenzie seemed oddly enthusiastic about my trip. This is perfect timing. I can house sit and take care of Tiger. You won't have to worry about a thing. Maybe I'll even surprise you with some organizational improvements. You know I'm good at that stuff. I left her with emergency contact information, a spare key, and specific instructions: no parties, no additional pets, no changes to the apartment without discussing first. She nodded seriously to each point, making me feel almost silly for my concerns. Relax, big brother. Everything will be fine. You can trust me. As my plane took off, I couldn't shake a vague feeling of unease. But I dismissed it as general anxiety about the important client project ahead. After all, this was Mackenzie, my sister. Despite her flaws, she wouldn't deliberately do anything to hurt me. How wrong I was. The Chicago project consumed my days and nights. I was in meetings from morning until evening, then spent hours troubleshooting code issues in my hotel room. I checked in with Mackenzie via text every few days, receiving cheerful responses that everything was fine at home. After 2 exhausting but successful weeks, I returned to my apartment late on a Friday night. When I opened the door, I froze in confusion. My living room had been transformed. A new sectional sofa replaced my comfortable old couch. A large flat-screen TV dominated the wall where my modest 40-inch had been. An expensive-looking area rug covered my hardwood floors, and designer lamps stood in corners previously occupied by my simple IKEA lighting. Surprise! Mackenzie emerged from the kitchen, arms wide. What do you think? Doesn't it look amazing? What, how? I struggled to form a coherent question. Where did all this come from? What happened to my furniture? Oh, I sold your old stuff on Facebook Marketplace. Don't worry. This is so much better, right? More grown up. That old couch was falling apart anyway. I felt a surge of anger. You sold my things without asking me? And how did you pay for all this? Mackenzie's smile faltered slightly. Well, I used some of my own money and I might have used your card for the rest. But it was a really good sale. Everything was like 30% off. I figured you'd want me to grab such great deals. My heart pounding, I pulled out my phone and opened my credit card app. The balance was nearly at the limit, almost $12,000 in charges from furniture stores, home goods retailers, and electronics shops over the past 2 weeks. This is not okay, Mackenzie. This is way beyond a misunderstanding. You had no right to do this. Her expression shifted to one of hurt. I was just trying to make things nice for you. You work so hard, and your place was kind of basic. I thought you'd be happy. Happy? You maxed out my credit card and got rid of my things without permission. This is... I stopped, noticing an unfamiliar envelope on the kitchen counter with my name on it. I picked it up, finding a credit card statement from a company I didn't have an account with. What's this? I asked, already dreading the answer. Mackenzie suddenly became very interested in her phone. Oh, that's nothing. Just some mail that came for you. I opened the envelope to find a credit card statement with a $7,500 balance, in my name, at an address I didn't recognize. Then another envelope caught my eye, and another. By the time I'd opened them all, I discovered 3 new credit cards in my name, all nearly maxed out. Mackenzie, did you open credit cards in my name? My voice was deadly quiet. She didn't meet my eyes. You have such good credit, and they gave really high limits. I was going to pay them off before you even knew about them. A terrible suspicion formed in my mind. I sat down at my laptop and logged into my bank accounts. My checking account was nearly empty. Just $237 remained of what should have been over $3,000. But worse was my savings account. The balance, which had been $48,752, my emergency fund and house down payment savings accumulated over years, now showed just $3,218. The room seemed to spin around me. "Where is my money?" I whispered. "I had some unexpected expenses," Mackenzie said, her voice small. "And opportunities. There was this investment thing, and I needed to pay off some old debts, and there were the trips with friends." I felt physically ill. "Show me your phone." "Now." After some resistance, she handed it over. I found her banking app and saw multiple transfers from my accounts to hers over the past 2 weeks. From there, the money had gone to online shopping, cash withdrawals, and payments to individuals I didn't know. Over the next several hours, I pieced together the full extent of her betrayal. Using my personal information from mails she'd intercepted and documents she'd found in my home office, Mackenzie had opened 3 new credit cards in my name, applied for 2 personal loans, changed the address on some of my existing accounts to a P.O. box she controlled, transferred over $45,000 from my savings to various accounts, made over $20,000 in purchases on my existing credit cards, sold several of my possessions, including my laptop, TV, and furniture. I found receipts for designer clothes, expensive electronics, and jewelry. Many items were missing, and Mackenzie eventually admitted she'd resold them for cash. On her laptop, which she reluctantly let me examine, I found screenshots of my social security number, birth certificate, and driver's license, all neatly organized in a folder labeled Noah Docs. This wasn't an impulsive shopping spree or a misunderstanding. This was calculated identity theft and fraud, planned and executed methodically over months. The sister I'd taken in and tried to help had systematically stolen my identity and cleaned out my accounts while I worked to support us both. As the shock began to wear off, I started documenting everything, taking photos of receipts, screenshots of unauthorized transfers, and notes about missing items. The total damage exceeded $75,000 when accounting for all the unauthorized charges, emptied accounts, and stolen possessions. "Why?" I finally asked, my voice hoarse after hours of questioning. "I was helping you. I gave you a place to stay, loaned you money when you needed it. Why would you do this to me?" Mackenzie's answer chilled me to the bone. "You always have it so easy," she said, a hint of resentment in her voice. "Perfect job, perfect credit, perfect life. You had all this money just sitting there while I struggled. I figured you wouldn't even notice if I took some. And once I started, it was just so easy to keep going." The calculation in her eyes told me this wasn't just about money. This was about something deeper, a resentment that had apparently been building for years while I remained oblivious, thinking we were close. "You need to return everything," I said firmly. "All the money, all the items you bought or the cash you got from selling them. And you need to move out. Tomorrow." Mackenzie's expression hardened. "Return everything? That's not possible. The money's gone, Noah. Spent. And where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore," I said, surprised at the coldness in my own voice. "You've destroyed my trust. You're not welcome here anymore." What happened next showed me who my sister truly was. I spent the night cataloging the damage, printing bank statements, and taking photos of the unauthorized purchases still in my apartment. By morning, I had a thick folder of evidence and a determination to have a final confrontation before Mackenzie left. I found her in the kitchen, casually making coffee as if nothing had happened. "We need to talk," I said, placing the folder on the kitchen table. "Sit down." She rolled her eyes but complied. I opened the folder and began laying out documents one by one. Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers, credit card applications I never filled out, receipts for items I never purchased. "This is the evidence of what you've done," I said calmly. "I've calculated that you've stolen $75,432 from me through fraudulent credit cards, unauthorized transfers, and theft of my possessions." Mackenzie glanced at the papers, then looked up with an expression of disbelief that quickly morphed into dismissal. "Oh my God, Noah! You're just being dramatic." Those words hit me like a physical blow. Dramatic? About having my life savings stolen? This isn't drama, Mackenzie. This is fraud. Identity theft. Actual crimes. She waved her hand dismissively. "It's not like that between family. Family shares things. You make plenty of money, you'll earn it back in what, a few months? Meanwhile, I've been struggling for years while you live your perfect little life. I worked for everything I have," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I made sacrifices, lived frugally, saved carefully. You chose a different path." "Oh, here we go with the lecture," she scoffed. "Saint Noah, so responsible, so perfect. You know what? After all I've done for you growing up, you owe me." "Done for me? What exactly have you done for me that justifies stealing my life savings?" "I was always there for you. When you were too scared to talk to girls in high school, when you needed help with your college applications, when Rachel dumped you, who was there? Me. I've been supporting you emotionally your whole life while you've been hoarding your precious money." Her revisionist history was staggering. She had been there during those times, yes, but as a normal sister, not as some emotional support person deserving financial compensation. "That's what family does, Mackenzie. We support each other. But family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't commit fraud against each other. It's not fraud if it's family," she insisted. "You're just selfish. Always have been. Never wanting to share your toys as a kid, and now, not willing to share your money as an adult." I realized with growing horror that she genuinely believed what she was saying. In her mind, my savings was a shared resource she was entitled to. "I need you to repay everything you took," I said firmly. "All of it. We can set up a payment plan if necessary." Mackenzie laughed, actually laughed. "Repay you? With what money?" "I spent it, Noah. It's gone. And even if I had it, why would I give it back when you obviously don't need it?" "Then I'll have to take legal action," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. I never imagined threatening my own sister with legal consequences. Her eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare. If you do that, I'll tell everyone in the family what you're doing to me. How you're attacking me when I'm down, throwing me out with nowhere to go. Who do you think they'll believe? The cold, money-obsessed brother or the struggling sister? They'll believe evidence," I said, tapping the folder. "Bank statements don't lie. Family isn't about evidence. It's about loyalty." She stood up abruptly. "You do whatever you think you need to do. But remember, if you come after me, you're destroying this family. Mom and Dad won't survive this kind of stress." "Is your precious money worth that?" The emotional manipulation was so blatant it almost seemed cartoonish, but I knew from experience that our parents would be devastated by this situation, regardless of who was at fault. "I want you out of my apartment today," I said, my resolve hardening. "Take your personal belongings only, nothing you purchased with my money or in my name. I'm changing the locks this afternoon." "Fine," she spat. "I'll go stay with Aunt Linda. And I'll make sure she knows exactly how you're treating me." As she stormed off to pack, I noticed she was grabbing items she'd purchased with my stolen money: designer clothes, jewelry, electronics. I stood in the doorway. "Those things stay. They were bought with stolen money." They're mine now, she snapped. Try and take them from me. Rather than engage in a physical confrontation, I took photos of everything she packed, adding to my documentation. 3 hours later, Mackenzie left with Tiger and 4 suitcases full of items purchased with my money. Her parting words haunted me. No one will believe you anyway. You've always been the weird, uptight one. I'm the one people actually like. After she left, I immediately called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. I also installed a simple security system with motion-detecting cameras, an expense I could barely afford given my newly decimated finances. The calls started that evening. First from Aunt Linda, demanding to know why I'd thrown my poor sister out on the street. Then from cousins, family, friends, even my parents, who called from their winter stay in Arizona, confused and concerned about the conflicting stories they were hearing. Mackenzie had been busy, crafting a narrative where I had arbitrarily decided to evict her, refused to help her financially during a difficult time, and was now acting crazy about some small loans she'd taken with the intention of paying back. According to her, I was having some kind of breakdown due to work stress. Some family members took my side, asking for my version of events. Others immediately believed Mackenzie's story, condemning me for abandoning my sister when she needed help. The division was painful, exposing fault lines in family relationships I hadn't previously recognized. The worst was my mother's tearful phone call. "Noah, honey, I don't understand what's happening between you two. Mackenzie says you're accusing her of stealing? She's your sister. There must be some misunderstanding." I tried to explain the situation without causing her additional stress. But how do you gently tell your mother that one of her children systematically defrauded the other? "Mom, I have bank statements, unauthorized credit card applications, everything. This isn't a misunderstanding. She took over $75,000 from me. But she says she just borrowed some money temporarily, with plans to pay it back. She's so upset, Noah. She's crying all the time. Mom, please. I know this is hard to hear, but Mackenzie is lying to you. I need you to trust me on this." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. My mother wanted to believe both her children, an impossible position. "I just want you two to work this out," she finally said. "We're family. Family sticks together, no matter what." That night, alone in my apartment surrounded by furniture I hadn't chosen, I broke down. The financial loss was devastating, but the betrayal and subsequent family division hurt even more. The sister I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who could steal from me then call me dramatic for being upset about it. Family members I trusted were choosing sides based on who told the most convincing story rather than facts. I felt more alone than I ever had before. But somewhere in that loneliness, a resolve began to form. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about standing up for truth, for consequences, for the principle that family ties don't grant immunity from responsibility. The next morning, I made the call that would change everything. The days following Mackenzie's departure were some of the darkest I'd experienced. I alternated between paralyzing anxiety about my financial situation and crushing grief over the family relationships that seemed irreparably damaged. Sleep became elusive, and when I did manage to drift off, I'd wake in a panic, reaching for my phone to check if any more money had somehow disappeared. On the third day, something shifted. I was staring at my nearly empty refrigerator, calculating how to stretch my remaining $237 until my next paycheck, when an unexpected clarity washed over me. This situation would not define me. I had built my financial security once. I could, and would, do it again. But first, I needed to stop the bleeding and hold Mackenzie accountable. I spent the evening researching identity theft, surprised to learn how common it was for family members to be the perpetrators. The statistics were sobering. Family financial fraud often went unreported due to shame, family pressure, or fear of damaging relationships. Many victims simply absorbed the loss rather than pursue justice against relatives. I refused to be one of those statistics. My first step was damage control. I called all 3 credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, to place fraud alerts on my accounts and request credit freezes. The customer service representative at Experian was particularly helpful, guiding me through the process of disputing the fraudulent accounts Mackenzie had opened in my name. "Unfortunately, sir, we see this kind of thing all too often," she said sympathetically. "Family fraud is particularly complicated to resolve. Do you have a police report number I can add to your file?" I didn't, but her question made it clear that I should. The thought of filing a police report against my own sister made my stomach churn, but I added it to my growing to-do list. Next, I contacted my bank to report the unauthorized transfers. This proved more challenging, as Mackenzie had used my login credentials, which I had provided, albeit for limited access, making it technically an authorized user situation. Nevertheless, I opened fraud investigations, providing all my documentation as evidence. My meeting with Lisa Chin, a financial advisor recommended by a colleague, was a sobering reality check. "Based on what you've shown me, you're looking at a significant financial setback," Lisa said after reviewing my documents. "Your credit score has dropped nearly 150 points due to the high utilization and new accounts. The unauthorized loans and credit cards will take months to resolve, even with fraud alerts. And recovering the money that was transferred from your savings, if recovery is possible at all, could take years of legal action." "Years?" The timeline staggered me. "Unfortunately, yes. And there's another factor you need to consider." She hesitated. "The fact that this fraud was committed by a family member you voluntarily gave access to your home and, to some extent, your accounts, complicates matters significantly. Some financial institutions may argue there was implied consent." I left Lisa's office with a clearer understanding of the mountain I needed to climb, but no less determined to reach the summit. She had given me a step-by-step financial recovery plan that would eventually rebuild my credit and savings, but the immediate crisis remained: holding Mackenzie accountable and, if possible, recovering what she had stolen. After another night of minimal sleep, I made the call I'd been dreading. Sarah Rodriguez, an attorney specializing in identity theft cases, agreed to meet with me the following day. Sarah's office was smaller than I expected, but her demeanor exuded competence and confidence. As I explained my situation, she took detailed notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and gave me a direct look. "Mr. Mitchell, I want to be completely transparent with you. Cases involving family members are among the most difficult I handle, both legally and emotionally. The good news is that you have substantial documentation, which many victims in your situation don't have. The challenging news is that pursuing this legally means your sister will likely face criminal charges for identity theft and fraud." "I understand," I said, though the reality of it made my voice waver. "Are you prepared for that outcome? Many clients in your position ultimately decide not to proceed once they understand their family member could face jail time." I thought about Mackenzie's dismissive, "You're just being dramatic," and her complete lack of remorse. "I need to know my options," I said carefully. Sarah outlined 3 potential paths. A civil suit seeking financial restitution without criminal charges, a full criminal complaint that would trigger police investigation and potential prosecution, or an informal resolution attempt through mediation. "Before you decide," she cautioned, "consider this: if your sister has done this to you, there's a high likelihood she has done or will do something similar to others. Identity theft, especially when successful, tends to be a repeated behavior pattern." Her words triggered a memory. Last Christmas, Mackenzie's ex-boyfriend had made an odd comment about her borrowing from his accounts. I'd dismissed it as post-breakup bitterness, but in light of recent events, it took on new significance. "Can I have a few days to think about this?" I asked. "Of course. But I would recommend taking some protective actions immediately, regardless of which path you choose." I left with a list of immediate steps and a heavier burden of knowledge. If I did nothing, Mackenzie would likely victimize others. If I pursued legal action, my sister could face criminal charges. There seemed to be no path forward that didn't involve more pain. Over the next week, I dug deeper, making discreet inquiries about Mackenzie's financial history. What I discovered was disturbing. Her ex-boyfriend confirmed my suspicions. She had borrowed nearly $12,000 from his accounts before their breakup. A former roommate revealed a similar story of missing cash and mysterious credit card charges. Neither had pursued legal action, preferring to cut ties and absorb the losses rather than engage in protracted conflict. I also spoke with my therapist, Dr. Martins, whom I had been seeing occasionally since my breakup with Rachel. Our sessions took on new urgency as I grappled with the dual trauma of financial theft and family betrayal. "You're facing an ethical dilemma with no painless solution," Dr. Martins observed during one particularly difficult session. "But consider this. Enabling harmful behavior isn't kindness, even when family is involved." Meanwhile, Mackenzie continued her campaign of family manipulation. Some relatives stopped speaking to me entirely. Others called daily, pressuring me to forgive and forget, for the sake of family harmony. My father, his voice weak following his recent heart issues, pleaded with me to resolve things with my sister before it's too late. The pressure was immense, but each manipulative message and call only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about truth, accountability, and preventing future victims. 2 weeks after my initial consultation with Sarah Rodriguez, I returned to her office with my decision. "I want to proceed with both civil and criminal actions," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I want to recover what I can financially, but I also want to ensure there are consequences that might prevent her from doing this to someone else." Sarah nodded. "I believe that's the right decision, difficult as it is. We'll start by filing a formal police report, then use that to support both the civil claim and the fraud disputes with the financial institutions." Filing the police report was surreal. Sitting in the station, providing details about my own sister to an officer who typed everything into a computer with a neutral expression, it felt like I was watching someone else's life unfold. "Family fraud cases are tough," the officer commented as he handed me the report number. "Most people never report it. Takes courage." I didn't feel courageous. I felt sick. But I also felt, for the first time in weeks, that I was taking meaningful steps to address the situation rather than just reacting to it. Sarah's next step was to send Mackenzie a formal cease and desist letter, outlining the evidence we had gathered and demanding repayment of the stolen funds. The letter also warned that failure to respond would result in both civil action for financial recovery and formal criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. Mackenzie's response came not to my attorney but directly to me, a barrage of texts and voicemails alternating between tearful pleas and vicious threats. "You're really going to send your own sister to jail over money? What kind of monster are you? If you do this, you're dead to me and the entire family. No one will ever forgive you. I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. But this legal stuff is excessive. We can work this out between us. Mom is crying every day because of what you're doing. If anything happens to her or Dad because of this stress, it's on your head." Each message was designed to hit where it would hurt most, leveraging our shared history and family connections. 2 months ago, they might have worked. Now, they only confirmed I was making the right choice. The final message, however, sent a chill through me. "You have no idea what I'm capable of when cornered. Back off now, or you'll regret it." I forwarded everything to Sarah, who immediately advised adding a restraining order to our legal actions. "Threats like these need to be taken seriously," she warned. As we prepared the legal filings, I continued rebuilding my financial life piece by piece. I took on freelance coding projects to supplement my income. I disputed fraudulent charges and negotiated with creditors. I explained the situation to my boss, who was surprisingly understanding and even arranged for an advance on my next performance bonus to help with immediate expenses. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time since discovering Mackenzie's betrayal, I felt a sense of forward momentum. I was no longer a passive victim but an active participant in my own recovery. The legal papers were filed on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, Mackenzie would be served with both the civil complaint and the restraining order. I braced myself for the fallout, knowing the real battle was just beginning. The moment Mackenzie was served with legal papers marked a point of no return. According to the process server, she had initially refused to accept the documents, claiming she wasn't Mackenzie Mitchell. When informed that rejection wouldn't stop the proceedings, she had snatched the papers and slammed the door. Within hours, my phone exploded with messages from family members. Aunt Linda called me heartless. 2 cousins I'd been close with throughout childhood blocked me on social media. My mother left a voicemail consisting entirely of her sobbing. The family narrative Mackenzie had crafted, that I was vindicatively persecuting my struggling sister over a misunderstanding, had taken firm root. Only my father's call offered any support. "I don't know exactly what happened between you two," he said, his voice tired. "But I've never known you to be cruel or impulsive. If you felt this was necessary, I trust you had good reasons." His simple faith in my character was a lifeline amid the storm of family condemnation. Working with the fraud departments at multiple financial institutions proved to be a full-time job in itself. Each had different procedures, documentation requirements, and timelines. Some were responsive and helpful, others seemed designed to wear down fraud victims until they gave up. I created spreadsheets to track every call, email, and fax, setting calendar reminders for follow-ups. Sarah guided me through each step with the efficiency of someone who had navigated these waters many times before. "The system isn't designed for ease," she explained during one particularly frustrating week. "But persistence pays off. Keep pushing." The first court date for the civil case arrived sooner than expected. I spent the night before in a state of anxiety, rehearsing what I would say if faced with Mackenzie in the courtroom. How would I react if she cried? If she accused me of abandoning her? If she brought up childhood memories to paint me as the villain? My worry proved unnecessary. When our case was called, Mackenzie was nowhere to be seen. "Your Honor, the defendant was properly served but has failed to appear," Sarah stated. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the file. "Given the defendant's failure to appear or file any response, we'll proceed without her." What followed was a methodical presentation of evidence: bank statements showing unauthorized transfers, credit card applications with forged signatures, statements from 2 of Mackenzie's previous victims who had come forward after learning about my case, and detailed financial forensics showing exactly how much had been taken and where it had gone. The judge listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Sarah finished, she looked at me directly. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand the defendant is your sister. This must be a difficult situation for you. Are you certain you wish to proceed with both financial restitution and the restraining order?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "The financial loss has been devastating, but the breach of trust is even worse. I believe both forms of relief are necessary." She nodded. "Given the comprehensive evidence presented and the defendant's failure to appear or contest any allegations, I'm granting the plaintiff's requests in full. The defendant is ordered to pay restitution of $75,432, plus $12,500 in legal fees and damages. Monthly payments will begin within 30 days, with wage garnishment authorized if voluntary payments aren't made. The 3-year restraining order is also granted, prohibiting the defendant from contacting the plaintiff or coming within 500 feet of his home or workplace." The gavel struck, and just like that, the first legal battle was won. I should have felt victorious, but instead, I felt hollow. A court judgment was one thing, actually recovering the money and rebuilding my life was another. 2 weeks later, we received notice that Mackenzie had finally retained an attorney, a development that Sarah found encouraging. "It means she's taking this seriously now," she explained. "It's actually better for recovery prospects if she has legal representation." The criminal case was moving forward as well. After reviewing the evidence provided by both my attorney and the financial institutions, the district attorney had decided to pursue charges for identity theft, fraud, and grand larceny. Mackenzie would face arraignment the following month. Our paths finally crossed at a mandatory settlement conference for the civil case. Entering the conference room and seeing Mackenzie for the first time in months was jarring. She looked thinner, her usually perfect makeup subdued, her expression a mixture of anger and fear. Beside her sat a middle-aged man in an ill-fitting suit, her attorney, presumably hired on a budget. "Noah," she said, her voice softer than I expected. "You don't have to do this. We can still work things out as family." Before I could respond, Sarah intervened. "This is not the time for direct communication between the parties. We're here to discuss settlement terms only." The negotiation that followed was tense but productive. Mackenzie's attorney acknowledged the strength of our evidence and the futility of fighting the judgment. Instead, they proposed a structured repayment plan based on Mackenzie's current income and future earning potential. "My client is currently employed at a real estate office making $36,000 annually," her attorney explained. "She can realistically manage payments of $400 monthly without defaulting. That would take over 15 years to repay the full amount," Sarah countered. "We need to see good faith efforts for more substantial recovery." After hours of back and forth, we reached an agreement. Mackenzie would make monthly payments of $500, increasing by $100 each year she remained employed. Additionally, she would surrender the remaining items purchased with stolen funds and provide a full accounting of everything she had sold. Most importantly, she would cooperate fully with the fraud investigations at the financial institutions, admitting her actions and removing any obstacles to clearing my credit. As the terms were finalized, Mackenzie finally spoke directly to me. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "It started small, and then it just spiraled." I wanted to believe her, to see genuine remorse, but the calculated way she'd exploited my trust made it impossible to take her words at face value. Was this real regret, or just another performance now that she faced consequences? "Actions have consequences," I replied simply. "I hope you understand that now." The criminal case proceeded to arraignment the following month. Given the evidence and Mackenzie's cooperation in the civil matter, her attorney negotiated a plea deal: guilty pleas to identity theft and fraudulent use of financial information, with the grand larceny charge dropped. The sentence was remarkably lenient: 3 years probation, mandatory financial counseling, and community service. No jail time, provided she adhered to the civil settlement and committed no further crimes. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Mackenzie turned toward me in the courtroom. "I betrayed my brother's trust in the worst possible way," she said, her voice breaking. "I told myself I deserved what I took because he had so much and I had so little. I was wrong. No excuse justifies what I did. I'm sorry, Noah. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry." For the first time since discovering her theft, I saw a glimpse of the sister I thought I knew. Whether genuine remorse or skilled manipulation, I couldn't tell, but it stirred complicated emotions nonetheless. After the sentencing, as we gathered our things to leave, Mackenzie approached with her attorney close behind. "Noah, can we talk? Just for a minute?" Sarah gave me a questioning look, and I nodded. She stepped away but remained within eyesight. "The family is falling apart over this," Mackenzie said without preamble. "Mom cries all the time. Dad tries to pretend everything's fine, but you can see it's killing him. Was it worth it? Destroying our family over money?" The familiar manipulation triggered something in me, not anger this time, but clarity. "You did that," I said quietly. "Not me. You destroyed our family when you chose to steal from me, then lie about it. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. I'm going to be paying you back for the next decade," she shot back. "Isn't that enough? Do you have to keep punishing everyone?" "This isn't punishment, Mackenzie. It's accountability. There's a difference." Her expression hardened. "You've always been so self-righteous. So perfect. You've destroyed our family with your pride and your principles. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw what I'd been missing all along. The person before me wasn't a victim of circumstance, or a sister who made a mistake. She was someone who fundamentally believed she was entitled to take what wasn't hers, then blame others for the consequences of her actions. Goodbye, Mackenzie, I said, turning to leave. I hope you find peace someday. That's it? You're just walking away from your family? I paused, looking back one last time. I'm walking away from toxicity and manipulation. There's a difference. As I left the courthouse with Sarah, a weight seemed to lift. The legal battles had been won. The financial recovery would take time, but there was a clear path forward. Most importantly, I had stood my ground against emotional manipulation and chosen truth over comfortable denial. The silence in the car as Sarah drove me home was broken by her thoughtful voice. You know, in all my years practicing law, I've rarely seen someone handle a case like this with as much dignity and resolve as you have. It doesn't feel like dignity, I admitted. Most days it feels like surviving. Sometimes that's what dignity looks like, she replied. Standing your ground when it would be easier to give in. As we pulled up to my apartment building, she added, the legal part is mostly done. The healing part is just beginning. Be patient with yourself through that process. I nodded, knowing she was right. The courts could order restitution, but rebuilding trust, in others and in myself, would be a longer journey. The months following the legal proceedings were focused on practical recovery. I worked with credit monitoring services to dispute the fraudulent accounts and slowly rebuild my credit score. Financial institutions, now armed with court judgments and criminal case outcomes, were more cooperative in removing unauthorized charges and working with me on repayment plans for the legitimate debts that remained. Security became a priority I'd never previously considered. I enrolled in comprehensive identity protection services, set up alerts for any activity on my accounts, and implemented two-factor authentication on everything from email to banking apps. My new apartment, I couldn't bear to stay in the old one with its memories of betrayal, had a security system and smart locks that logged every entry and exit. Some might call these measures paranoid. I called them prudent. The financial recovery proceeded in small, incremental steps. Mackenzie's monthly payments arrived consistently. A surprise to both me and Sarah, who had prepared for the likely scenario of pursuing wage garnishment. The amounts were small compared to what had been taken, but each payment represented a tiny piece of restoration. More challenging than the financial rebuilding was the emotional aftermath. Family gatherings became battlegrounds of awkward silences and divided loyalties. Some relatives chose sides, creating painful rifts that showed no signs of healing. Others attempted to play peacemaker, urging reconciliation without accountability, a formula I knew would only enable further harm. My parents occupied the most difficult position. Mom initially couldn't accept the magnitude of what Mackenzie had done, choosing to believe there had been a misunderstanding, that her children had blown out of proportion. Dad, more pragmatic, recognized the evidence but mourned the family fracture. Both struggled with how to love two children who couldn't be in the same room. Thanksgiving at my parents' house that year was the first major family gathering since the court cases. I arrived with trepidation, unsure who would be present or how I would be received. To my relief, my parents had made the difficult decision not to invite Mackenzie, prioritizing my comfort as the wrong party. Several relatives, however, boycotted in protest, leaving empty chairs that seemed to accuse me with their absence. I hate that it's come to this, Mom said tearfully as we set the table. Our family has never been divided like this before. I know, Mom. I'm sorry it's been so hard on you and Dad. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? For the family's sake? The question was asked without manipulation, born of genuine maternal pain at seeing her family fractured. I considered my response carefully. Forgiveness isn't the issue, Mom. I'm working on that for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened or putting myself in position to be hurt again. It doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. Dad, overhearing from the kitchen doorway, joined the conversation. Your mother wants the family whole again. We're not getting any younger, and this situation, it's hard. I know, I acknowledged. But whole doesn't always mean healthy. Sometimes boundaries are necessary for real healing. The conversation didn't resolve anything, but it opened a door to mutual understanding that had previously been closed. My parents began to accept that while reconciliation might someday be possible, it would require genuine change from Mackenzie, not just the passage of time. Therapy became my lifeline during this period. Dr. Martins helped me process not just the betrayal and financial trauma, but the deeper family dynamics that had made me vulnerable to manipulation. You've spent your life being the responsible one, the fixer, she observed during one session. That created a pattern where Mackenzie's irresponsibility became your problem to solve, not hers. So I enabled her? Not intentionally. But family systems often fall into patterns that serve none of the members well. Your responsibility was weaponized against you. These insights helped me recognize and resist the ingrained patterns that had shaped our sibling relationship. I learned to distinguish between healthy family support and unhealthy codependence, between genuine accountability and punitive judgment. 6 months after the court cases concluded, Mackenzie reached out via email, the only communication method not blocked by the restraining order. I've been in therapy, she wrote. My counselor suggested I write to you as part of making amends. I'm not asking for forgiveness or for things to go back to how they were. I just want you to know I'm working on understanding why I did what I did. The court-ordered financial counseling has been eye-opening too. I never realized how much my spending was about trying to fill emotional holes. None of this excuses what I did to you. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. I showed the email to Dr. Martins, uncertain how to respond, or whether to respond at all. What do you want to do? She asked simply. Part of me wants to believe she's changing. Another part thinks this is just another manipulation. Both could be true. People can sincerely want to change and still fall back on manipulative patterns when stressed. The question is whether you want to engage at all right now. After careful consideration, I sent a brief, neutral response. Thank you for letting me know you're getting help. I wish you well on your journey. No accusations, no reopening of wounds, but also no false promises of reconciliation. As the 1-year anniversary of discovering the theft approached, I realized how much had changed. My financial situation, while not fully recovered, had stabilized. My credit score had climbed back into the good range. Most importantly, I had built a new social support network to replace the family connections that had been damaged or lost. Work colleagues had become friends who invited me to weekend hikes and game nights. A neighbor in my new apartment building introduced me to his running group, giving me both exercise and community. I even started dating again, cautiously, with new awareness of my boundaries and values. The experience had changed me fundamentally. I was more cautious but also more authentic, less willing to maintain relationships based on obligation rather than mutual respect. I valued honesty above harmony and had learned that real love includes accountability. One unexpected outcome was how my experience helped others. After a local news outlet ran a story about identity theft protection that briefly mentioned my case, I received messages from several people facing similar situations with family members. Some were in the early stages of discovery. Others had been enabling financial abuse for years without recognizing it as such. I found myself sharing resources, recommending attorneys, and offering the validation many couldn't find elsewhere. Yes, it really is that bad. No, you're not overreacting. Yes, you have the right to protect yourself. These connections evolved into an informal support group that met monthly at a local coffee shop. We shared strategies for financial recovery, navigated family pressures together, and celebrated small victories in reclaiming our lives. What had begun as one of the worst experiences of my life had somehow created a community of mutual support I never could have anticipated. On the evening of that 1-year anniversary, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the sunset and reflecting on the journey. My phone buzzed with a notification. The monthly payment from Mackenzie had been deposited, right on schedule. A year ago, that notification would have triggered anger and pain. Today, it was simply information, a small piece of restoration in a much larger healing process. The money had never been just about money. It represented years of work, sacrifice, and careful planning, a physical manifestation of my values and goals. Having it taken wasn't just a financial loss but a violation of those values. Fighting to recover it wasn't greed but self-respect. My life today looks different than I had planned. The house down payment I'd been saving for is still years away. Some family relationships remain strained or severed. Trust comes harder than it once did. But there's an authenticity to my connections now that was missing before. A certainty that the people in my life are there because they respect who I truly am, not who they need me to be. If there's one lesson I've learned through all of this, it's that family is defined by behavior, not blood. Real family, whether related by genetics or by choice, respects boundaries, honors truth, and helps each other grow rather than enabling harm. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for family is to hold them accountable, even when it's painful. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to walk away from those who refuse accountability. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with Mackenzie. The monthly payments will continue for years, a regular reminder of what happened between us. Perhaps with time and genuine change on her part, some form of relationship might be possible. Or perhaps we'll remain connected only by court orders and family obligations, the trust between us permanently broken. What I do know is that I'm no longer defined by what happened to me. I'm defined by how I responded, with dignity, resilience, and a commitment to truth. That's something no one can take from me. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between family harmony and personal boundaries? Do you think there's a point where family loyalty should have limits? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story helped you in any way, please consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. Thanks for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones we need the most.